So, we're going to take you to the book of Acts 1. Acts 1, and we'll start reading at 13. Now, we saw the importance of Mary's being used a vessel of honor, and so forth, and all of that to bring the Lord into this world. But some put more value on her than they should. She was a woman, and a chosen woman to bring Jesus to the world, but some take it farther than that, and you can't take it any farther than what it is. And so, for one thing, to help people to understand about the Holy Ghost is that even Mary, the mother of Jesus, needed it. Now, if anyone could have gotten by without receiving the Holy Ghost, it would have been Mary, the mother of Jesus. But if she could not get by, then that means no one else in the world can get by without receiving the Holy Ghost with speaking in other tongues or another language. Tongue just means language. If someone was to say to you, what is your native tongue? Then they're talking about what language do you speak. And so don't let the devil, don't let people frighten you with the word tongues. It just means language. And the devil would try to frighten people away from it. That is not of God, and it is of God. Well, let's go a little bit further here. In Acts 1, we'll start reading at verse 13. Jesus had told them to go back to Jerusalem till they be endued with power on high. Was talking about the Holy Ghost. He said, and when they were come in, they went up into an upper room where abode both Peter and James and John and Andrew, Philip and Thomas, Bartholomew and Matthew, James the son of Alphaeus, and Simon Zelotes, and Judas the brother of James. It said, these continued with one accord in prayer and supplication with the women and Mary the mother of Jesus, and with his brethren. Okay. Now, Jesus' brethren was also there. Now, but let's take a look at verse 14, and we'll see where it emphasizes that Mary was in the upper room to get the Holy Ghost. It says, these all continued. It first talked about the apostles, and then it goes on to say, these all continued with one accord in prayer and supplication with the women. Now, Mary was a woman. Was she not included with the women? Luke, the writer, could have just said the women. But he went on to emphasize and say, and Mary who? Mary Magdalene? No. Mary, the mother of Jesus, and with his brethren. So Luke emphasized Mary was there. He also emphasized that Jesus had brothers were there. So his family could not get by without receiving the Holy Ghost. His mother, his brethren. So there is no family salvation. Even Jesus' earthly family had to receive the Holy Ghost, speaking with other tongues, as everyone has to do, as your evidence of receiving the Holy Ghost. It says this, and in those days Peter stood up in the midst of the disciples and said, the number of names together were about 120. So when people try to tell you that it was only the apostles, that contradicts the scriptures. It even says And that Peter said, and the number of us are about 120 here, waiting to receive the Holy Ghost. Now, let's go to Acts 2. Now it says, and when the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all with one accord in one place. And suddenly there came a sound from heaven as of a rushing mighty wind, and it filled all the house where they were sitting. Everyone that was in that house, all right, the Holy Ghost came through as a rushing mighty wind and filled all the house where they were sitting. And there appeared unto them clove tongues, means divided tongues of different languages, clove tongues like as of fire, and is set upon each of them. In the Bible, you will find the Bible uses the word fire when it comes to God. On the mountain burned with fire when the presence of God was on Mount Sinai. The Bible also said that God is a consuming fire. When God was in the burning bush, which was a theophany, represented God in the burning bush. So the fire represents the presence of God. And so it set upon each of them. It said, and they were all filled with the Holy Ghost and began to speak with other tongues or other languages as the Spirit gave them utterance. So here it is that when they began to speak in another language or in tongues, it was given to them by the Spirit. And if you look at this, the Spirit, it's capitalized. It's talking about God. If they were uttering those words through the power of the Holy Ghost or the Spirit of God. And it said, and they were all filled. So that means Mary was there, her family was there. So they were all filled with the Holy Ghost and began to speak with other tongues. Mary began to speak with other tongues. Her sons that were with her began to speak with other tongues. So it is not just for the apostles. It is for everybody. And if Mary needed it, her family needed it, we all need it. And they got it, and they spoke in other tongues, other languages. So that means that everybody who gets it will speak in other tongues or other languages. So, the Holy Ghost is for everybody. And it goes on to say, people that were there began to say this. They were from every nation under heaven there. It says, now when this was noised abroad, the multitude came together and were confounded, because that every man heard them speak in their own language. All the people from different nations that were there heard these group of Galileans speak in all of their languages in which they were born, because it was given to them by God. So tongue just means languages. So the devil is a liar to say that that is of the devil when people are speaking in tongues or another language. It says, and they were all amazed and marveled, saying one to another, behold, are not all these which speak Galileans? And how hear we every man in our own tongue or our own language where when we were born? That's just impossible. And so they went on to say that this is the wonderful works of God. They said that this is the wonderful works of God. And it was God. No one speaks a language they didn't learn except they get it from God. And so we can pick this up a little further down the road next week and talk about Alfonso Coble at sbcglobal.net.